At exactly 6:15 every morning, the lights inside the small white house on Maple Street turned on. Neighbors noticed it because it never changed. Not on weekdays, not on weekends, not even during storms. The man who lived there liked routine. He waved to everyone. He smiled easily. He helped carry groceries. He remembered names. He remembered birthdays. If you asked anyone in that town who the most reliable person was, the answer came quickly and confidently. Him. No hesitation. No doubt. This is the story of that man, and how trusting him became the worst mistake an entire community ever made. A town where nothing ever happened. The town was small enough that people still locked their doors out of habit. Not fear. Children rode bicycles until sunset. Neighbors borrowed sugar. People left packages on porches overnight. It was the kind of place where crime felt like something that happened somewhere else. On the news. In big cities. To other people. And that sense of safety had a face. The man from Maple Street. He lived alone, but he was never lonely. He volunteered. He attended church events even when he did not stay for the sermon. He helped at local fundraisers and charity drives. When someone's car broke down, he was there before the tow truck. When someone's child went missing for 10 minutes, he helped search. Police officers knew him by name. So did teachers. So did shop owners. He was familiar, and familiarity feels like safety. The man everyone knew. He was not rich. He was not powerful. He was not loud. That was part of the reason people trusted him. He worked a normal job, paid his bills on time, never argued, never complained. His social media showed nothing strange. No angry posts, no dark jokes, just photos of sunsets, coffee cups, and the occasional picture from town events. If you were asked to describe him in one word, it would be normal. And normal is invisible. A reputation built over years. Trust is not given all at once. It is built slowly, over years. Every small helpful act added another brick to his reputation. Helping an elderly neighbor clean snow, fixing a broken fence without being asked, driving someone to the hospital at midnight. People began saying things like, "He would never do something like that. He is not that kind of person. If he says it happened that way, I believe him." Those sentences would matter later, more than anyone realized. The first time no one questioned him. One evening, a woman from the neighborhood knocked on his door. She had locked herself out. Her phone battery was dead. Her husband was out of town. He opened the door immediately, let her use the phone, made her tea. Nothing bad happened. And that was important, because trust grows fastest when nothing goes wrong. After that, people stopped thinking twice. Children were allowed inside his house to wait for parents. Packages were left with him for safekeeping. Private conversations happened in his living room. Doors opened easily. So did secrets. The image never cracked. There were no rumors, no complaints, no warning signs anyone wanted to remember. If something felt slightly off, it was dismissed. He is just quiet. He is just private. He has had a hard life. We like simple explanations. They protect us from uncomfortable questions. And he understood that. The day everything still felt normal. On a Tuesday morning, the town woke up like it always did. Coffee brewed. Cars started. School buses stopped at the same corners. The man from Maple Street waved as he left his house. A neighbor waved back. It was the last normal interaction anyone would ever have with him. But no one knew that yet. A small incident. Later that day, police received a call. Nothing dramatic. Nothing urgent. A concern. Someone had not shown up for work. A phone was not being answered. A door was locked. This kind of call happens sometimes. The responding officer did not rush. He did not expect anything serious. He even thought about grabbing lunch afterward. That is how unthreatening the situation felt. His name came up casually. While officers spoke to neighbors, his name came up. He might know something. He is always around. He usually helps. The officer nodded. Of course, that made sense. They went to Maple Street. A familiar face at the door. When the officer knocked, the door opened quickly. The man looked surprised but not nervous. He smiled. "Is everything okay, officer?" That smile would later be replayed in people's minds again and again. At the time, it meant nothing. Why would it? He was the last person anyone would suspect. A simple statement. He answered questions calmly. Yes, he had seen the person earlier. Yes, everything seemed normal. No, nothing unusual stood out. His story was clear, consistent, believable. The officer thanked him and left. No report filed. No follow-up needed. Case closed. At least that is what everyone thought. What no one noticed. There was one detail. Small, almost invisible. A pause before one answer. Less than a second. The officer did not notice. The neighbor watching from across the street did not notice. And even if they had, it would not have mattered, because trust filters what we see. When you trust someone, your brain edits reality for you. The town moves on. By evening, life returned to normal. People cooked dinner. Televisions played quietly in living rooms. The man from Maple Street turned off his lights at exactly the same time as always. Routine restored, or so it seemed. Behind closed doors, what happened inside that house that night was never witnessed. No cameras, no neighbors watching, just silence. The kind of silence that hides things. The kind that feels heavy only in hindsight. The first crack appears. 3 days later, something changed. The person who had not shown up for work still had not returned. Now it was strange. Phones still unanswered. Messages unread. Police went back. This time the tone was different. Still calm, but more serious. And again they spoke to the man from Maple Street. The second conversation. He answered again. But this time, his story had a tiny shift. Not enough to raise alarms. Just enough to confuse. He corrected himself once. Then laughed it off. Sorry, my memory isn't great these days. The officer nodded. Everyone forgets things, right? Why no one pushed harder. This is important. Police are trained to look for patterns. But they are also human. And humans trust faces they recognize. This man had built recognition for years. So questions stayed polite, soft. No pressure. No urgency. The investigation moved outward, not inward. The community defends him. As whispers started, people shut them down. He would never. Stop spreading nonsense. He helped my family when no one else did. Defending him felt like defending the town itself. Because if he was capable of something terrible, what did that say about everyone else? The lie that went unnoticed. There was a lie. A small one. So small it did not look like a lie at all. It was about time. About when he last saw someone. A difference of minutes. But in investigations, minutes matter. No one realized yet. The calm before the truth. That week ended quietly. Too quietly. No arrests. No headlines. Just an uncomfortable feeling some people could not explain. A sense that something was wrong, but not knowing where to look. And all the while, the man from Maple Street continued his routine. Waving. Smiling. Helping. Exactly as before. What no one in that town knew was this. That one small lie. That half-second pause. That tiny change in his story would soon unravel everything. When the story started to slip, for nearly a week nothing happened. That was the strange part. No sirens, no breaking news, no sudden arrests, just silence. In most investigations, silence is either a relief or a warning. This time it was a warning that no one recognized yet. The missing person becomes a problem. On the 8th day, the case officially changed status. The person who had not shown up for work was now considered missing. That one word changed everything. Missing meant procedures, paperwork, timelines. It meant that every conversation from the past week mattered, including the ones everyone had already forgotten. A timeline is built. Police began reconstructing the last known movements, where the person was seen, who spoke to them, what time they were last confirmed alive. That is when the problem appeared. The timeline did not line up cleanly. There was a gap, and that gap pointed directly to Maple Street, revisiting a familiar door. When officers returned, they expected cooperation, and they got it. The man opened the door with the same calm expression, same polite tone, same friendly posture. If anything, he seemed eager to help. "That's terrible," he said. "I was wondering what happened to them." The words were perfect, too perfect. The question that changed everything. This time, the officer asked a more specific question. "What time did you last see them?" The man answered quickly, "Just after 6:30 in the evening." No hesitation. It sounded confident, but confidence is not the same as truth. A quiet correction. As the officer wrote it down, something happened. The man frowned. "Actually, it might have been closer to 6:15. He laughed softly. "Sorry, the days blend together." The officer adjusted his notes. "No red flags." People misremember times all the time, but the timeline now had 2 versions, and neither quite fit. The neighbor who remembered differently. Later that day, police spoke to a neighbor across the street. Casual conversation, routine questions. Then the officer asked, "Did you see anyone that evening?" The neighbor paused. "Yes," she said. "I saw them talking outside his house." "What time?" "Closer to 7, she replied. "I remember because it was almost dark." That answer did not match either version. Small differences that matter. To most people, a difference of 45 minutes means nothing. In an investigation, it can mean everything. It changes where someone could have gone, who they could have met, what could have happened. And suddenly the timeline was not just unclear, It was broken. The first internal doubt. The officer reviewing the notes felt something subtle. Not suspicion. Discomfort. The kind you feel when a puzzle piece almost fits, but not quite. He looked again at the name written multiple times on the page. The man from Maple Street. The one everyone trusted. Why trust delays suspicion? This is something investigators rarely talk about publicly. Trust slows down doubt. When someone feels familiar, the brain resists questioning them. That resistance buys time. And time is dangerous. A routine that was too perfect. Police began quietly observing. Nothing aggressive. Nothing obvious. They noted routines. Lights on at 6:15. Lights off at the same time every night. Garbage taken out on schedule. Mail collected promptly. Too consistent. Most people's lives have small variations. His did not. The missing phone. The missing person's phone had not been located. No pings. No activity. It was as if it had vanished. Phones do not disappear easily, unless someone makes them disappear. A subtle change in behavior. Neighbors later recalled something odd. After the police visits, the man smiled less. Not dramatically, just enough to notice in hindsight. He still waved. Still helped. But conversations were shorter, more controlled. The second lie. Police asked again about that evening. Same question, different phrasing. This time the man said something new. I didn't actually speak to them. I just saw them walking. That contradicted both earlier statements. Conversation or no conversation. You do not forget that detail. The explanation that almost worked. When asked about the inconsistency, he did not get defensive. He explained, I was distracted that day. I had a lot on my mind. He mentioned stress, work issues, family problems, normal excuses, human excuses, and they worked. For a while, the report that changed tone. Internally, the case file changed. No accusations, just a note. Inconsistent statements regarding timeline. That line matters. It is often the first crack in a case. Community pushback. As police presence increased, people noticed. Whispers started, and immediately the town pushed back. He's being harassed. They should look elsewhere. This is ridiculous. People called the station to complain. They defended him fiercely. Because admitting doubt felt like betrayal. The officer who did not let it go. One officer kept rereading the statements. Not because they were dramatic. Because they were subtle. Lies rarely explode. They leak. The question of opportunity. Investigators asked themselves a quiet question. If something happened, who had the opportunity? Who was nearby? Who was trusted enough to not raise alarm? The answer stayed the same, and it made everyone uncomfortable. A routine check turned serious. Police requested permission to look around the property. Not a search, just a check. The man agreed immediately. That surprised them. People with nothing to hide often hesitate out of annoyance. People with something to hide sometimes cooperate fully, because they believe the truth is buried deeper. Inside the house was clean. Not just tidy, carefully clean. No clutter. No personal mess. It felt more like a staged space than a lived-in one. The smell of cleaning products lingered. Fresh. Too fresh. Nothing obvious. No signs of struggle. No obvious evidence. If anything, it looked boring. That almost ended the concern. Almost. The detail they almost missed. As officers prepared to leave, one noticed something small. A trash bag tied unusually tight. Heavy. Too heavy for normal household waste. It was already collected. Gone. And gone meant unreachable. A new direction. That trash bag changed the tone of the investigation. Not officially. Not yet. But emotionally, the officer wrote another note. Recent disposal of unknown contents. Another crack. The man notices the shift. People sense when trust wavers. The man sensed it. He became more careful, more rehearsed. Answers shorter. Smiles timed. Trust had protected him before. Now he relied on control. The missing person's car. 3 days later, a car was found. Parked legally. Clean. No damage. Too clean. Inside, nothing personal remained. No bag. No phone. As if someone had erased a life. The lie becomes clear. Security footage from a nearby store showed something important. The missing person alive. At a time that contradicted everything the man had said. The difference was no longer minutes. It was hours. And that was no accident. The question no one asked out loud. If he was wrong about time once, fine. Twice, understandable. 3 times? That is not memory. That is design. The trust starts to collapse. Quietly, without headlines. Trust began to crack. Not publicly. Internally. Among investigators. Among a few neighbors who started replaying conversations in their minds. Moments that felt different now. The calm mask holds. The man did not panic. He did not run. He stayed, because running would confirm everything, and he still believed trust would protect him. What he did not know was this: a single piece of evidence was about to surface. Not dramatic, not violent, just undeniable. And once it appeared, there would be no more explanations. The evidence did not arrive loudly. No raid, no flashing lights, no dramatic announcement. It arrived quietly, almost politely. And that is often how the truth shows up. When someone has hidden it carefully for a long time. The item no one expected. The missing person's phone was found. Not in a river, not destroyed. It was turned off, wrapped in plastic, hidden inside a public trash bin, 3 miles from Maple Street. That detail mattered, because it meant effort, and effort means intention. Why this changed everything. Phones are personal. People rarely part with them voluntarily. And this phone had been powered off manually. Not dropped, not damaged. Turned off, by someone who knew exactly what they were doing. The timeline collapses. Forensic analysis showed the last activity. A message sent at a time that contradicted every version of the story given so far. The missing person was alive, well after the man from Maple Street claimed he last saw them. This was no longer a mistake. It was a lie. The first hard question. Investigators returned. This time the tone changed. Still calm, still professional, but firmer. They placed the phone on the table. They did not accuse. They waited. Silence does something to people, especially people who rely on control. The pause that said too much. The man stared at the phone longer than necessary. Just a second too long. Then he spoke. "I've never seen that before." The words were quick. Too quick. The question he could not answer. "Then how did it end up near your route home from work?" That question landed differently, because now it was specific, grounded, and suddenly explanations became harder. A shift in behavior. He leaned back, crossed his arms. Defensive posture. A subtle change. People who tell the truth usually lean forward. The third story. He tried again. Maybe they dropped it. Maybe someone else picked it up. Maybe he was being framed. The explanations came faster now. Less polished. Investigators noticed the pattern. Every version served one purpose. Distance. Distance from time. Distance from place. Distance from responsibility. This was no longer cooperation. It was avoidance. The house revisited. This time, police came with permission. And paperwork. Not aggressive, but thorough. They searched slowly. Methodically. Nothing rushed. Because people who hide things often hide them where no one looks twice. The ordinary object. It was not a weapon. Not blood. Not anything dramatic. It was a notebook. Tucked behind cleaning supplies. Simple. Unlabeled. The notes inside. Times. Dates. Short phrases. Not diary entries. Records. Movements. Patterns. Including references to the missing person. Too detailed to be casual. Too detached to be emotional. Why this was disturbing? It showed planning. Not impulse. Planning is worse. Planning means choice. The community still defends him. Even now, people resisted the truth. That doesn't prove anything. You can't ruin someone's life over notes. Trust does not die easily. It fights back. The first leak. Someone talked. A quiet confirmation that police were looking seriously at him. The town reacted. Sides formed. People argued. Some stayed silent. Silence is often the first sign that belief is breaking. A memory reinterpreted. Neighbors started remembering things differently. The late-night trash run. The unusual cleaning. The controlled routines. None of it mattered before. Now it mattered a lot. The man notices everything. He adjusted again. Stopped waving. Curtains closed earlier. Car parked differently. Small changes. Survival instincts. The interview that changed tone. He was brought in again. Not arrested. Just questioned. This time, recordings ran continuously. No casual pauses. No friendly exits. The question about motive. Why would someone trust you? The question surprised him. Because it was not about evidence. It was about identity. He answered carefully. "I'm just a helpful person." But his voice lacked warmth. It sounded practiced. The psychological shift. Investigators noticed something else. He spoke about people as if they were objects. No emotion. No empathy. Just descriptions. That is not normal. The final crack. They showed him one photo. Security footage. Clear. Undeniable. The missing person entering his house at a time he claimed he was alone. He did not deny it. He just went quiet. Silence is not innocence. Minutes passed. No words. No explanations. The room felt heavy. Silence is where lies go to die. The mask slips. Finally, he spoke. I didn't think it would go this far. That sentence changed everything. Because innocent people do not say that. What he did not say. He did not say, I didn't do it. He did not say, you're wrong. He said, I didn't think. The case becomes public. Within days, the story broke. Headlines spread. Shock rippled through the town. The phrase everyone used was the same. I can't believe it was him. Trust turns into anger. People felt betrayed. Not just by him, by themselves. They had ignored signs, defended him, protected him. And now they had to live with that. The man is no longer safe. Trust had protected him for years. Now it was gone. And without trust, there was nothing left. But the truth was still incomplete. Because investigators now believed he had not acted alone. There were gaps, unanswered questions. He was never alone. Once the case became public, the town changed. Not with panic, not with chaos, but with silence. People still went to work. Stores still opened. Lights still turned on at night. Yet something invisible had shifted. Because the question was no longer what happened. It was this. How did we all miss it? What happens when trust breaks? When trust collapses, memories don't disappear. They change. Smiles that once felt warm now seemed calculated. Acts of kindness felt less generous and more strategic. Moments that were once ignored suddenly felt important. And the hardest realization was this. Everyone had helped build the image that protected him. A new direction in the investigation. Investigators stopped focusing on the obvious evidence. They went back to the notebook. Not the written words. The empty spaces. The margins. The repeated marks. The symbols that didn't belong to any normal note-taking system. At first, they seemed meaningless. Until they were placed next to the timeline, the pattern emerges. The symbols appeared at consistent intervals, always near specific dates, always near specific times. They weren't reminders. They were indicators, markers of coordination, which meant one thing. He wasn't acting alone. The second name. When police cross-referenced the symbols with known contacts, one name kept appearing. A name no one expected. Someone respected. Someone trusted. Someone deeply involved in the community. Another good person. That realization stopped the investigation cold. Because one trusted figure felt like a tragedy. Two felt like a systemic failure. The quiet interview. The second person was invited in. Not arrested. Not accused. Just asked to help clarify a few things. That phrasing matters. People speak more freely when they feel safe. Familiar behavior. The behavior was nearly identical. Calm voice. Controlled posture. Carefully chosen words. Even the expressions were similar. That level of similarity doesn't happen naturally. It happens through preparation. Stories that matched too well. Their timelines aligned perfectly. Not approximately. Perfectly. Real memories are messy. Rehearsed ones are clean. And this was too clean. The financial trail. Investigators followed something most people overlook. Small financial transfers. Nothing large. Nothing dramatic. Just quiet movement of money over time. The kind designed not to attract attention. But money always leaves a trail. Motive becomes clear. This wasn't rage. It wasn't desperation. It was control. The missing person had discovered information. Not something violent. Something damaging. Something that could expose misuse of trust and influence. And they were planning to speak. The call before everything changed. Phone records revealed a short call. Just minutes before the last confirmed sighting. Between the two trusted figures, both phones showed the call deleted. But deletion doesn't erase network records. It only hides them from people who don't know where to look. Pressure builds. Interviews became longer. Questions sharper. And the calm began to crack. Eye contact broke. Voices tightened. Answers slowed. Control was slipping. The sentence that changed everything. One investigator said something simple. The truth is already complete. We're just deciding how it's told. That sentence creates a choice. And one of them chose survival. The first break. The second person asked for a lawyer, then asked to speak privately. That moment changed the case. A partial confession. They didn't admit to planning anything. They admitted to knowing. Knowing something was wrong. Knowing it had gone too far. Knowing silence would help. And silence is participation. The web unravels. Once one thread broke, everything aligned. The symbols, the locations, the timing. The notebook was no longer confusing. It was a record. The arrests. 2 arrests. Same day, same town. No resistance, no speeches. People watched quietly from windows. Some cried. Some felt relief. Others felt ashamed. The town's reaction. Trust collapsed overnight. Familiar faces felt unfamiliar. Memories became uncomfortable. and one thought echoed everywhere. If they could do this, who else did we misjudge? The man from Maple Street speaks. During processing, he asked one question. Not about evidence, not about charges. He asked, "Do they still think I'm a good person?" That question revealed everything. The truth no one wanted. He was never impulsive. He was patient. He didn't rely on fear. He relied on trust. And trust protected him longer than anything else could have. One question remains, but one thing was still missing. What actually happened that night? Why it went further than planned? And how the system allowed it to happen? The final hours are revealed. The full truth comes out. The failures are exposed. And the lesson this case left behind becomes clear. Because the most dangerous people are rarely the ones who look dangerous. The final hours and consequences. It was a Thursday evening when everything came together. Not with a bang. Not with a sudden crime scene. But with evidence, methodical and undeniable, that exposed the depth of deception. By now, the investigators had pieced together the timeline, the interactions, and the network of lies. And it was worse than anyone imagined. The night everything changed. The missing person had arrived at the man from Maple Street's home later than previously claimed. The second accomplice was already there. Both of them knew what they were doing. Every move had been calculated. Every alibi rehearsed. It was not impulsive. It was patient. And it was cruel. Confrontation behind closed doors. Investigators never fully knew the words exchanged inside the house. Only the aftermath. The missing person tried to resist, tried to escape the growing trap. But trust, years of blind trust, had allowed the perpetrators to anticipate every reaction. Every door, every lock, every small distraction had been accounted for, the evidence that sealed it. CCTV footage, phone records, and the notebook entries all aligned. Even the smallest details, minutes, steps, objects moved, confirmed their involvement. Nothing was left to chance. It was undeniable. This was no longer suspicion. This was proof. The arrests and public shock. When police finally executed the arrests, the town was stunned. Neighbors whispered, "It couldn't have been them." Family members cried. Everyone who had defended the man from Maple Street felt betrayed. Not just by him, but by themselves. Years of trust, kindness, and familiarity had masked the truth. And it took the patient work of investigators to peel away that mask. Why trust became their weapon? This case revealed something chilling. Trust itself can be weaponized. People do not question those they know. Communities ignore red flags when the face is familiar. The most dangerous people are not those who are obviously violent. They are the ones who are patient, polite, loved, and able to manipulate the perception of everyone around them. The aftermath in the town. The community could never see the same streets the same way. Porches that once seemed safe now felt like stage sets. Neighbors looked at each other differently. Children learned to be cautious in ways no parent intended. And adults replayed every small interaction in their minds, asking, "How did I miss it? How did we all miss it?" Legal consequences. Both men faced serious charges. Years of planning, covering tracks, and manipulating trust were documented in full. Their accomplices, the evidence, and the timing left no loopholes. The court system finally had what it needed to hold them accountable. Lessons from the case? Trust is not proof. Familiarity can blind even the most cautious. Small inconsistencies matter. Minutes, objects, and gestures often reveal the truth. Silence is complicity. People who ignore warning signs may inadvertently protect those who are dangerous. Deception can be subtle. Evil does not always arrive with violence. Sometimes it comes as politeness, patience, and routine. The final reflection. The man from Maple Street and his accomplice were never outwardly violent. They smiled, helped, and integrated themselves into the community. But beneath that ordinary exterior, they had planned, controlled, and manipulated. And the people who trusted them the most, neighbors, colleagues, friends, had been blind. The legacy. Years later, the case is still studied. Law enforcement trains officers on the power of psychological manipulation. Communities talk about the limits of familiarity. And the lesson remains. The most dangerous people are rarely the ones who look dangerous. Sometimes the ones you trust the most are the ones you should watch the closest. The story ends with the truth fully revealed. But the message stays. Trust, like evidence, is fragile. And deception often wears the most ordinary face.